Hey guys, Tactic here. In this video we're going to see how a well-geared follower performs against bosses and some random trash in Torment 6. We will also test some of the items that appear to be overpowered from reading the tooltip, but actually they're not as they seem simply because of the hidden mechanics behind them, in this case the internal cooldown or the proc chance. So let's get back to Ghom now. As you can see, I am at the entrance of the larder, so we're gonna remove all my damaging skills. You can clearly see I don't have Thorns damage, so I won't reflect any damage at all. And you can see on the follower, it has pretty much the basic single target build that I'm using in Greater Rifts. It's nothing special. Basically, the items do all the job here. And now for the items. I am testing this with an ancient Thunder Fury. It's very bad rolled, so it won't do much more than a normal Thunder Fury. The token, of course, a Moonlight Ward, since in my opinion it's the best necklace for the follower. For the shield, the Defender of Westmarch, the Bul'Katos Wedding Band, pretty crappy rolled, but it's gonna do the job with the secondary. And the Unity. I found the ancient Unity. The strength could be higher, but yeah. So I have around 550,000 DPS on this follower. Notice the strength gems. They also help a lot due to the scalability of strength on followers. You can check my previous video about all the mechanics revolving around followers and the items you can use, but let's just focus on DPS now, and on the DPS on Ghom specifically. Now you can clearly see the follower moves around, Ghom moves around, and this won't happen in a very high Greater Rift, and the damage will be a lot higher too, due to the scaling effect of the life drain from Bul'Katos Wedding Band that he's wearing. The most important thing when you look at this video is not to judge that, so what, it's gonna kill him in under 3 minutes, no big deal. It's false actually. That's 3 minutes out of a boss fight that you won't have to DPS overall in a Greater Rift on other mobs. And most of his attacks are actually AoE, so all the damage he deals on Ghom, he can deal a lot more damage in a Greater Rift where he is actually surrounded with mobs, and he can even taunt them and proc its Westmarch Defender, because as you can see, Ghom here only attacks me. Now keep in mind that as a barbarian, well, not exactly as a barbarian, but in this case my barb doesn't really debuff Ghom to take extra damage like other classes can with auras from monks, for example, shield glare from the crusader, and so on. So you can get extremely much more value out of your follower if you use it in a Greater Rift where the Bul'Katos Wedding Band will tick even higher. You prop your debuffs on the mobs or on the bosses or on the elites, and they take extra damage. And you can just think that if the ticks are 20 million here in a Greater Rift, I couldn't really test, and I can't really test them in higher Greater Rift since I play hardcore, because I will just die. But I'm pretty sure the damage can be pretty ridiculous, especially if you debuff mobs, bosses and elites. And you can't really ignore the rest of the procs either, because the proc from the Thunder Fury hits 5 targets, they get slowed, they attack slower, they move slower. The Moonlight Ward is constantly AoEing. So the Moonlight Ward, since the Templar is always in the melee, it will always AoE mobs with arcane damage. So the Odin Sun, if you want more single target damage, but I don't recommend it, just use the Thunder Fury if you can. As you can see in this video, I'm gonna use my crappy rolled Odin Sun ancient weapon because of the proc. So it's only 24% out of 40% proc chance. But yeah, I'm using it just for the sake of for just testing purposes. Don't really use Odin Sun and Greater Rift simply because the chaining effect from the proc is a lot weaker than the Thunder Fury's proc, simply because the chain lightning from Odin Sun doesn't really link only if mobs are really close to one another, and the Thunder Fury's proc cover more mobs, and the range between them can be a lot higher than from the Odin Sun. So overall, just use the Thunder Fury. I'm just using it to Odin Sun here simply because it's only a boss fight. You will never use an item just for a boss fight in Greater Rifts, so I'm just testing, like, just to see that the Odin Sun actually performs almost the same as a Thunder Fury. But overall, if you include the trash and the benefits and all that, just use the Thunder Fury on your follower. And you can't really ignore the rest of the damage except the Bul'Katos Wedding Band. So let's take for example the Westmarch Defender shield proc. You don't really see it here. I could have just used Taunt, but the Taunt takes time to cast from him, and that's extra DPS loss from him, and overall the chance from getting a proc versus attacking 3 times normally just doesn't really cut it for single target. But of course in Greater Rifts I always use Taunt instead of heal, and most people who use the Templar, even if they're ranged, they use Taunt anyways. So in Greater Rifts the densities are higher now, so basically the Templar in a higher Greater Rift, when he uses its Taunt, there's gonna be like 20-30 mobs hitting him, so the proc from the Westmarch Defender will catch up, especially in a higher Greater Rift. And we can't ignore the Moonlight Ward necklace. I'm gonna test the Overwhelming Desire later on this video. I'll show you why I think that Moonlight Ward is a lot better than Overwhelming Desire. Now of course we can't ignore the proc from the weapons. I'm gonna use Thunder Fury no matter what, simply because the debuff with movement speed and attack speed to mobs, the proc hits 5 mobs at a time, and the proc actually, I've saw the Templar proccing 2 times in a row, so 2 consecutive hits procced the Thunder Fury effect. So this is extremely good for a weapon on a Templar. So about the rest of the weapons that you can use, you can check my previous video as well. And right now you can see this is Torment 6, so the ticks won't be this high on the AoE on the mobs. So you can see the small white things like darts, the wolves. Those are the procs from the Westmarch Defender. You can see that they look really weird. They're not really wolves, more like, I don't know, they look like rats more than wolves. I was expected to see, when I first saw that shield, a massive wolf to appear charging through mobs, but I think that will only make the game run a lot harder on weaker systems. So I totally understand that, especially because you can see the proc is actually, I don't think it has an internal cooldown, because you can see 3 wolves at the same time. Now the follower has the Overwhelming Desire equipped, and right now I'm just looking for an elite, so we can see the proc chance right here. I thought that this is the event with the elite tree, but I was wrong, so I'm gonna keep looking for elites. And if I remember correctly, right about now, yeah, the Key Warden is coming, so we're gonna see an epic fight here. So let's just clear the trash, and we're gonna see how how the Moonlight Ward actually procs on elites, because that's what's important. We don't really care about procs on trash. So we're gonna clear all the trash now, anytime now. So let's see how you can see it already procced, and the ticks are way higher. It was be 20 million before and 25 million after the proc. Keep in mind the proc actually increases your DPS as well, so it's actually nice. So you can see it procced again, but the elites have diminishing returns on crowd control. So after the first proc, the timer will be way lower, and if you already use crowd controlling effects on mobs, like for example you stun them, you freeze them, and so on, the debuff, the charm effect, will actually last very few seconds on him. And overall, I still think the Moonlight Ward is more viable, simply because the proc is constant, it's an AoE effect, it doesn't interfere with your other crowd control effects. And one very important thing is that if you have a charm effect yourself, this is actually something we tested in our clan. So if you have a charm effect and the follower or somebody else uses the necklace and overrides it, for example, my threatening shout with Skull of Resonance will charm mobs. Everything other than the overwhelming desire, if the overwhelming desire applies a debuff on a mob and you come with a different charm effect from your spells, from your other weapon effects, basically it will remove the buff, and yeah, that's pretty bad, since it's already proccing really slow, and the debuff lasts a lot less on elites. I think the blue elites don't really have diminishing returns, but the yellow elites and the Rift Guardians, it doesn't really work at all on Rift Guardians, by the way. So it only works on trash and elites. So this is another great disadvantage that the overwhelming desire has. But in the end, if you don't have a Moonlight Ward, of course it's better than nothing. It's actually useful for ranged classes that don't really have other crowd control effects, just to try and squeeze the extra seconds that mobs focus on your follower or stay crowd controlled. But in the end, as a melee class especially, just use a Moonlight Ward on your follower if you can. It's a wizard only drop, so you're gonna invite wizards or ask nicely for a crappy rolled Moonlight Ward when a wizard finds it to give it to you. So overall, I think you can see now that you can really use the follower as an advantage in Greater Rifts. Aside from all the damage it provides, it can heal you, it can give you more resource generation, more regeneration. Basically, try to focus on your follower, especially if you don't use the items. It doesn't really hurt, it improves your solo play a lot, and it really helps you if you want to rank up, or if you want to improve your ranking. I'm not talking about world first or top 10 or top 100. I'm just saying, if you do this, if you equip your follower, if you won't really do one extra level of a Greater Rift by doing it, I'm pretty sure, I'm not pretty sure, I'm very sure that you will increase your time on the previous clear speed of the Greater Rift. Wondering why do you keep showing us only Templar, and why don't you show us Enchantress and Scoundrel gameplay? This is simply because I don't use them, and I don't like talking about stuff that I don't really know about, just the theory craft. But once I finish my exams and I'll have more time, pretty sure I'm gonna start playing with my Demon Hunter, my Witch Doctor, or who knows, maybe I'll roll a Monk. and then I'll try out the Scoundrel and the Enchantress as well. So I hope you guys made an impression about a good geared Templar and that how useful can it be in Greater Rifts. Well, I didn't really show you how it performs in Greater Rifts, but you can only imagine it's a lot better because the damage is higher and the mobs are piling up around the Templar to get all the extra AoE. So basically, if you have a ranged follower, you won't be able to use obviously the Westmarch Defender or the Moonlight Ward, since the arcane explosions are basically a melee AoE. It won't really work on a Scoundrel or an Enchantress, simply because they won't be in melee range. So this is it, guys. I hope you found some interesting information in this video, and maybe it will help improve your follower, because in the end it does really hurt just to slap some extra items on your follower if you don't really need them. So thanks a lot, guys, for all the support on all the channels. Hit that sub button if you found something interesting on my channel, and see you guys next time.